Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. In today's episode we're going to be taking a look at the new Panasonic GH5S. Now before we start, I've got an apology to make. In a previous video I was looking at the Panasonic G9, and in that I said that when you were using the 60 frame per second burst rate it would only record 8 megapixel image files. And this was incorrect. As it was pointed out to me, it will record at the full 20.3 megapixels at 60 frames per second. The only difference between the 60 frame per second and the 20 frame per second is the 20 frames per second you can use the continuous autofocus, and at 60 frames per second you can use the single autofocus. So huge apologies about that. We try and be as precise as we can, but mistakes do happen. So that done, let's move on and have a look at the Panasonic GH5S. Now the Panasonic GH5 was launched last year as a replacement for the GH4, and it again blew the market away with its video capabilities. But what Panasonic have done now is they've decided to bring out an S version, and this is even more geared towards video side. It's basically taken away a lot of the photography side of the GH5 and has added a few things in to make this an even more capable video camera. So starting off with the sensor, the GH5S actually has a smaller resolution sensor than the GH5. And this may seem weird with a new camera release, but there are reasons behind it. The GH5 has a 20.3 megapixel sensor, where the GH5S has a 10.2 megapixel sensor. And one of the reasons for this is because it's much more geared towards video, it doesn't need the higher resolution pixel rate that you'd need for stills photography. Now the sensor on the GH5S is what Panasonic are calling a dual native ISO sensor. And basically what this means is it has two different circuits. The first circuit is used for ISO readings between ISO 160 and ISO 640. Then as you go up to ISO 800, the second circuit takes over, and that is what helps give the camera a better low light performance. One of the other differences between the GH5S and the GH5 is that Panasonic have actually removed the built-in image stabilization. This may seem a little bit odd, but I think the idea is that where it's aimed at the professional video market, professional video shooters will use their own stabilizing units and gimbals, which can sometimes interfere with the inbuilt stabilization if it's switched on in the camera. Now, whereas the GH5 is an amazing video camera that will also shoot great stills, the GH5S is much more geared towards video. So as you'd expect, it shoots 4K and it will shoot 4K at up to 60 frames per second. At full HD 1080p, the GH5S will actually shoot at 240 frames per second, so you get some amazing slow motion with this camera. Another addition to the GH5S is that it now has Vlog already installed. You could get Vlog for the GH5, but it was an additional upgrade that you had to pay for and then install the software on the camera. The GH5S also has built-in Timecode Sync, which wasn't on the original GH5. They've also improved the refresh rate on the electronic viewfinder, and that's now got 120 frames per second refresh rate on it as well. Another upgrade on the GH5S is that it now has better microphone inputs, it has a line in, and it also has a phantom power for using powered condenser mics. Body-wise, the GH5S and the GH5 are exactly the same camera. There's been a few differences just to differentiate them, mainly that the GH5S has a red S on the front of it to denote the model number. There's also a little red ring around the dial to show that it's the GH5S, and the red dot button on the GH5 has been replaced by a red record button on the top. So who's the GH5S actually for? I can't see someone who already owns a GH5 jumping in and upgrading to a GH5S just for its low light capabilities. I think if you were shooting low light video, you'd have gone with something like the Sony A7S in the first place, which has amazing low light capabilities. But I do think that the GH5S has a market within professional video, maybe as a B camera if you shoot corporate videos, or even a main camera if you shoot wedding videos. But the two cameras are actually definitely sort of meant to go side by side. They're not an upgrade of one or the other. There's the GH5 if you want great video and photo capabilities, and the GH5S if you're looking for something that's much more geared towards professional video use. So that concludes our look at the Panasonic GH5S. I'm Dave Vickers. This is the Photo Show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.